Hi, I'm John Beener, President and Founder of Wise Counsel. Really appreciate you watching this little video session. This is really video clips about some of the best speakers that we have, resources that are available to you and your managing partner in your Wise Counsel group. I think some of this is really practical. Some of these people are real experts and presidents of companies, and they're meant to bring the Christian perspective as well as the business perspective to each of our lives, and I think you'll get a lot from them. So let's just start off by me talking about a few of them. The first one is Sam Chad. Sam is the president of Bethel Heights Bible College near Atlanta. He's an incredible story of a man that, as a young man, came to the United States from India. His father and mother sent him over here on the boat, and he started at Bethel College, started as the janitor, worked through the school, obviously graduated, and they invited him back to be president of the college. And he talks about what it takes to motivate people through a talk he calls Who's Holding Your Ladder? And it's about motivation versus leadership, and it's really about hiring and selection. But it's cute, it's informative, it's intelligent. Sam is a great speaker. You get a lot from hearing him present. Michael Pink is our next speaker. Michael is an incredible guy, raised in Canada, came to the United States, really worked a long time in the Nashville, Tennessee area in copier sales. Been through the Xerox sales training course, but he's also written a book called Selling Among Wolves and also another book called The Bible Incorporated. Michael is very in-depth. He has probably been the top-rated resources that we've used. We've actually have him on 3 different videos. The first one, Selling Among Wolves, and the next one about leadership, and another one a more advanced look at sales. But again, it's about how the Bible applies in business and how prayer and openness to God's leading in your sales process really makes a greater impact than if you just use your head instead of your heart as well. Oz Hillman is our next one. Oz is a former advertising executive, had his own companies in Atlanta. And what happened to him is he actually went down the tube through a very difficult divorce, struggling. He went through what he calls today the Joseph calling. And while he doesn't talk about that on the video, he does talk about the power of the staff and how God is calling all of us in business to be His representative and actually pick up the staff as God did to Moses to lead our organizations and do it from a biblical basis. He started Marketplace Leaders. It's probably the biggest movement in America right now, bringing ministries and business people together. Oz Hillman, you're going to like what he says. Next is Alan Melton. As a young man, he went through a lot of tragedy. His mother took her life in the bathroom one day, and it was a tragic experience using a revolver. His father was an alcoholic, so he went through very tough experiences, but fortunately, he was saved by a passerby on a baseball diamond one night, and it changed his whole life. And Alan tells the story of how he went through this tragedy as well as got involved with another man in a business and how they started using open book management and quality circles and also started to take on the initiatives that they had learned from the Ritz-Carlton chain. And then how he sold the business from taking the direction from God about when and how to leave. It's a powerful story, testimony, but very practical, something you're going to get a lot from. Here's Tom Hill. He's a businessman that owns a company called Chemray in Oklahoma City. He has an incredible story to tell about in the 1980s where they went through incredible difficulty, and Tom was trying to figure out and decide whether he should still be in business or not. His workers' comp costs were $180,000 a year. His turnover of people was erratic and troublesome. He was under a lot of pressure from the Japanese as well. But Tom, through a Bible study and a witness from a friend, decided, if worst comes to worst, at least I can teach my people about character and help them change their life, because they're not learning it from other people. They're not learning about responsibility and discipline and the things they ought to be knowing about. So he started on a program to teach his employees about the 49 character traits of God that he found in the Bible. And sure enough, those workers' comp costs went from $180,000 just to $20,000 in 18 months. Turnaround of his organization, profitability came back, and now companies around the country are taking on his Character First program as a practical way to lead their company and change the lives of their own people. You're going to really enjoy hearing from Earl Pitts. Earl Pitts is a former IBM executive from Canada that's gone through deep experiences with ministry during his sales career there with IBM, but decided to chuck all of that because he had a passion and a heart to teach people about the difference between wealth, riches, and money. And his in-depth presentation, it is so backed up by scriptures, it is almost mind-boggling. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat as you hear Earl talk about these things. These are practical things, not only useful in our business, but useful in sharing with friends and even practical for our family understanding as well. I know you're going to get a lot from hearing Ted Prince talk. Ted Prince is from Australia. I'm still learning to say that correctly. He's coaching me on that. But Ted was an unusual guy that somehow made his way from Australia to New York City, started to work for venture capital firms, and he was actually asked to hire many CEOs, served on 15 different boards of directors. And what he started to see was the patterns of success and failures in the people that they hired. He almost could predict it once they made the judgment on people before they actually hired him. And he was right on. And now he's writing a book on the whole subject, and he's been kind enough to share with us and other CEOs in our roundtable process. And the title of his talk is Why Some CEOs Succeed and Many Fail. It's practical, it's useful. You will gain real insight from this talk. If you want to meet somebody humble, it's Jim Dismore. Here's a guy, 6'7", that played basketball in Indiana, one of those dream teams that made it to the state championship back in the 1950s. Worked for different department stores, ended up meeting a man by the name of Sam Walton and his brother, who recruited him away and said, we're going to build some discount stores. They'd put 2 up already, but they asked Jim to come in with the 3rd one, and he ended up becoming senior vice president, executive vice president, lots of different roles and hats that he played. 13 years with Sam Walton and his brother, built an incredible company, incredible stories to talk about. But Jim went through other situations later on, having been CEOs of other companies and now has his own company in Fort Collins, Colorado, but felt called by God to start a strategic planning process called The Kingdom Way, how to lead your company for biblical principles and how to be really practical and on target with it. Jim is a humble man you want to hear. You will get in-depth knowledge from listening to him talk. Al Hollingsworth is one of those people you just dream about meeting. He is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. From Southern California, rags to rich story. His father worked in the meat markets in Omaha. His grandfather was a sharecropper. But Al, having graduated from the University of Colorado, went to business and had God's calling, incredible success, almost too fast, went through bankruptcy. But now he's rebuilt his business under a $200 million company with 6 packaging plants around the country, and has an incredible story about understanding the depth and wisdom and insight of what motivates people and what drives them to success, and how to understand from a biblical point of view what you can do about it and how you can pray for them. Al has a big heart and an incredible successful track record to back up what he says. You don't want to miss hearing from Pat Robertson. I know we all might have different impressions of him as a televangelist or someone who's built up a big ministry, but you don't realize the humbleness of his beginnings. And if you're in the audience with him, you really have a passion to hear what he has to say. And he tells it from his practical, biblical experience and study point of view. And that's all about the 3 cornerstones of business success. Pat Robertson is the real deal and someone that has a lot to share that you want to hear from. Next, you're gonna see John Reinhold. John is the CEO of the Christian Care Ministry, as well as also known as MediShare. It's a cooperative, very unusual concept, not an insurance company, but a cooperative where 70,000 different Christians share in the payment of medical bills. But they not only do that, they help you avoid surgery and help you deal with problems before they actually occur. What a unique concept. Wow, if the insurance companies could only learn from him. John had practical experience in the insurance field. This was a God calling, but he talks about the phenomenal growth and the things, the pearls that he learned in growing 20% a year compounded growth over the last 6 years. You don't want to miss hearing his presentation. Horst Schulze is an incredible story. As a young man in Switzerland and Austria, he learned the hotel business from the ground up. And never finished high school, but learned it in such a deep way that he eventually came to America with a heart to be in the hotel industry, and was the man really responsible for building the Ritz-Carlton chain. He talks about excellence in the Ritz-Carlton way. It's an incredible story about the experiences that he's had and the rules and the process that they put into place. It's again about quality, and it's about customer service. But he also tells the touching story about how he had a bout with cancer and how these godly Christian entrepreneurs came to him and prayed with him, and how God resurrected his life through that experience. Dave Brown's one of these MBAs that got his degree from Wharton. So you knew he was smart, but he ended up as a young man in lens crafters when they were doing about $200 million in sales, and it wasn't long before he became the CEO of the company and took them to $2 billion. But the touching part of his story and what he talks about in this presentation is really not about the business side of it, but it's about the ministry side. It's about how God touched his heart and told him to start a ministry called The Gift of Sight. And that was really about taking eyeglasses from Americans. These are eyeglasses that were used or were turned into them at their stores, and having them reconditioned and take them to missions around the world. It's an incredible story about how his whole company got changed and the culture got created all around being a mission. And that was their purpose. And the turnover went from 20% a year down to practically nothing a year, because people had a deeper commitment than worrying about the salary they got and what happened in their job. It was a mission for them in their business. Next, you're going to get a glimpse of Hugh Jones, who was the president of one of the fastest growing banks in the state of Florida. And it's a story about how really when he took over the bank, he wasn't very keen about community involvement or ministry or anything like that. But he had a chance to experience a difference in his people as he got them involved in the community with Habitat projects and Ronald McDonald and other projects that were both community-oriented, even ministry-oriented. And he started to see leadership in his people, and he started to see camaraderie develop where there was infighting and bitterness and jealousy in a big corporation like that. He started to see camaraderie and teamwork come into play, and the productivity and the profitability of the company went up dramatically through this experience. And he really pins it to the Bible and about loving your neighbor, and how if you take on God's principles, really it's about fruitfulness, from helping people to even profitability. Finally, these last two videos are presentations that I've made. One's called The 7 Keys to Good Cash Flow, and the other one's about the business life cycles of a corporation, about how they succeed and how they fail. These are pretty good presentations. My wife thinks so anyway, and my mom, she thinks so as well. I think other people think so because they've heard it and they've got some practical ideas. The bottom line is that I've just had a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs and CEOs through the years. Having had the previous business I had where we had 300 CEOs all over Florida, and now with Wise Counsel as we grow. But the first business was secular. I had the privilege of seeing businesses, how they operated inside their company and how the CEO thought and how he managed people. So I saw the patterns of success. Plus, we'd hire 300 different speakers a year to come in and share wisdom and knowledge from a good, solid business practical basis. But on the other side, on the Wise Counsel side, what I've seen is the spiritual nature of man and what's causing a man to do different things, or causing him to be successful or not be successful, and what the struggles or pain is all about. And that's the spiritual side. And again, what I say, and if you haven't heard me say it yet, you'll hear me say it again, and that is there's a double life of every Christian leader. And one is about being in the world and taking on the right character and the right moral principles of God to be successful. It's not, obviously, it's about honoring God in that area. But there's another side, and that's about the spiritual side, and that's hearing from God, knowing your calling, knowing your purpose, knowing your ministry, and having that confirmed by Him and other members of Wise Counsel. So that's what Wise Counsel is all about, sharing these kinds of resources that give you wisdom and insights to strike a balance in your walk and your journey to be successful by what God's calling you to do. Thank you.